Yeah, the bass. I love the bass. Right before you got here, I said you're late. You owe 10 push-ups, but
Oh, you
I
did?
can't even do 10 push-ups.
I'll do 10 push-ups. I guess I can still do it. I used to be able to do like 50 because I was going to go into the Air Force and do like, I don't know.
No, you don't have to do 10 push-ups.
It'll be good. I can do it.
Okay, 10 push-ups.
Yeah. Only 10? That's actually not that bad.
All right, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's Greg.
Ah, yeah!
No, that was 10. That's
Keeping the big-
your punishment for being late is 10 push-ups. Okay.
I just did double for you.
Wow, look at that. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I really don't feel
Warm
it.
in here. I didn't really want it either. I just want to see if I could.
Nice, that's a good way to say
Get the blood pumping.
Yeah.
How's it going, everyone?
Good. How was open mic this Tuesday?
I don't know, we didn't go.
Yeah, I know.
Get to go, man.
Sorry, I wanted to.
I have an injury and I couldn't.
Well, you missed it.
I know. I'm sad.
I did my thing up there.
Alrighty.
Jason saw it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm depressed about it.
Finally got to see son of a bitch.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
Sucks.
Well, now you can't go twice a week, so you'll be able to go.
I know. Plus you went to Tennessee or something.
I found out. Not yet.
Oh, you're getting ready.
That's actually after the program ends. We're heading straight to the
I finally saw the video that you took of
you?
but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It was that live song, I Alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you'd want to see that. So.
Did you know that these markers are low odor?
Well,
I want the high
I guess I'll wait to be sniffing them.
There's some people over
They're
there.
still pretty high odor. Not strong enough. As you saw me sniff a marker, I'm getting fired.
We're gonna lose our job. Nice scratch.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Is that the wait? How's the amp that you got?
Oh yeah. How's your Marshall?
Good.
You like
I
it?
It's on the back.
Oh, nice, dude. Very nice.
Yeah, no, it worked. Yeah, I'll bring it.
Does everyone have an amp? Do you have an amp?
I have amps set up.
I thought about that. I probably should have brought the electric again.
It's okay, dude. Don't worry about it. I was thinking about doing something a little different today. I didn't really plan anything out for this one because I didn't know who was gonna be here, and I actually got really worried because everyone showed up so late. I was like, dang, we gotta do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that recording?
Yeah. Where's Mike?
Everybody was fashionably late.
Mike,
So-
Mike never comes.
Well,
Yeah, he's got a
Rob
lot of
said
family stuff going on. Man.
about his daughter's birthday or whatever.
I'm trying to give him a little more of a personal push, but he's had so much family crap going on. He messages me every week. And I tell him, you know, we all wish him good. But today I was thinking about rhythm and how important it is, and how no one, especially for guitar, no one ever kind of gives you like a crash course on rhythm.
Whose jewel is that?
No, that's yours.
Oh, you have
Oh,
one?
that's yours.
Yeah, I did.
Part of the game. So who knows what rhythm is?
Let's see. What the definition of rhythm?
What would
Playing,
duration
playing the
of the music.
basic melody, I guess, while other people do other things.
It's a
Okay,
steady pace,
that's
right?
yeah. So it's basically just a steady pace or steady tempo. Something. Rhythm is a pulse that you feel no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it, like if you really think about it. No, that's everything because everything has a pulse.
Except for you.
All right, so that's kind of the most important thing. Steady pulse, I should say. With music, because we want it to be steady. If we're constantly speeding up, people probably aren't going to enjoy it because they can't dance to it.
That's one of the things I really like in a drummer. Is
When they
has
speed
a
up.
very nice meter.
Miles is the definition of a
He
metric.
gave up on me.
But
Miles.
Miles Davis.
yeah,
Oh.
Miles the drum teacher, and probably Miles Davis too. I'm sure he fired many people for speeding up or slowing down. So, one thing about rhythm, that I've always been taught is that it's important to be able to like really feel it. Now I'm not gonna make you guys go ham today with the metronome or anything. That can be a really frustrating process, but if you want to get better at it, download an app on your phones, use the metronome whenever you play anything. It will make you realize how much you're not in rhythm. Because nobody's perfect at it. Drummers are the closest thing
I'm
to
losing
it.
my place all the time.
Yeah. But
I was like, oh shit.
the good thing that a metronome does help you do is listen while you're playing, which is a really important skill to have, especially when you're playing with other people, right? You know, you guys know from like the open mic, you go there and you play with a drummer and a bass player. If you're not listening to where they're at and they're not listening to you, you guys are probably just going to be jumbled everywhere.
I don't know.
I mean, everybody might be guessing, but if you're using your ears while you're using your hands, you know, then it's really going to help you a lot. So,
guitar stand right there.
oh yeah, here.
I like this one better.
Okay. I got guitar stands all around the room, because we actually made it early today. So, one thing I think we could try to do is give everyone a chance to keep the rhythm today while we jam. We're going to do kind of what we did last week. I want everybody to kind of play together. We'll keep it something simple, but the point of this exercise is that you guys are listening to everyone else. Obviously not like honing super in on what everyone's doing, just knowing where everyone generally is. We're going to make a song, 2 parts, and 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, I think we did this, and yeah.
Last week.
Well, last week we did, but you guys were improvising, and that was over blues.
3 weeks ago.
But
Yeah,
the one with
yeah.
the 2-parter, right?
Yeah.
And I was kind of shouting out when we were changing. I'm going to try to not do that as much. You guys are adults. I think you can handle knowing. And the point of this is to feel it. And if you fuck it up, it's okay. All you have to do is just catch up. All right. So if you miss, you know, changing from part A to part B, and look around, be listening. And that's really all you got to do. If you mess up, it's not the biggest thing in the world, because we're in this room right now. Even when you're on stage, everybody messes up. I don't know how many concerts you guys have been to, but I've played a lot, and I've definitely been to a lot of shows. Nobody's perfect. And I have seen bands, everyone's like, wow, that was a great set. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't hear how many times that
Even the big
guitar player.
even the big boys screw up.
Oh man,
Oh.
they screw up the most because
Right.
they're doing it all the time. And when you do something that many times, it's like, then you get to the point where you don't even remember if you're playing or not, you know, because you've done it so much.
I usually just stop and listen to the drummer.
Now that's a big
Okay, there's the beat, and
That's a good idea. As a guitar player too, that's the best idea. Because too many guitar players try to cover their tracks by overplaying.
well, that's
when they're
because they're
lost.
better than me.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I know,
I'm
I
saying
get it.
That kind of makes them, if anything, probably a little more unprofessional. If they're like soloing or they're just doing licks and stuff over with someone's, you know, a song, and then they try like really hard to cover up the fact that they're fucking up with. It's just like, no, dude, you're playing guitar, you can stop.
Right.
It's totally fine. As long as bass and drums, you guys don't get to stop.
Right.
Because you are the glue.
Right,
You,
that's
you
what's
guys
not-
are really the thing holding it down. That's not to say guitar isn't as important. It's to say that guitar, it's a lead instrument. So like, you know, you can be soloing, and if you fuck up, dude, you can fucking stop. Like, especially if there's another guitar player, let him do it, let her do it. You know, like you can just take a break, take a breather. And even in certain songs, I've been messed up on bass, and you know, I mean, I know my stuff, but I've been messed up where I'm like, what the fuck are we doing right now? And I just am like, well, okay, here we go, and then I catch back up.
It's the brain fart.
Right, it's
That's
that's
it.
all it is.
And it's what's really bad is when you're a solo player. You have a brain fart not only on the guitar chords but also the lyrics. And you're like,
So what do you do then?
I'm just gonna jam for a minute there.
Okay, you do.
That's not a bad cover up, dude. If you stop completely, freeze.
that's what everybody looks
bad.
to do.
That's really bad.
Nobody's paying attention, so you either fuck up really bad or just stop playing.
Right, stop
period.
playing.
I mean, one thing too.
Thank God.
That's because the band, you know, if you have like a solid drummer and bass player behind you, yeah, you're good. But it's solo, it's quiet. Everyone's paying attention. And if
Look at that guy going. What
if you
the
get
hell
really
just
quiet, then
happened?
you're in trouble because everyone's like, oh, it got really quiet in here, and they look at the musician that's playing on stage. But anyways, my point is, rhythm is important, and it really helps helps to kind of round out all the stuff we're doing in here, especially playing in a group. I think that's like a really important thing. Using the metronome is only going to help no matter how fucking frustrating it gets. We'll do it a little bit today, but that's not a place you start. That's a place where when you have something down and you want to make it really tight, especially if you're playing like something kind of complicated like funk or jazz or like something metal, and you want to get faster at it. Say you're playing, you know, that scale pattern we did last week, the minor pentatonic scale, and you want to be able to go, you know, and shred it. Set your metronome at a low speed and start really slow, and then you speed it up gradually. And that's like just a tool of the trade, but it's all really up to you. A lot of people don't do that. Anyways, so let's write our song today. What do you guys want to do? Somebody pick a key.
A.
A what?
What flat?
A flat.
Sharp?
No.
No.
A minor.
Minor, major.
Oh, well, sorry.
7, 9 with a flat 13.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That was it.
I'm not even gonna
I'm not
begin to get
making
into
a
that. I don't think I could even
Together.
remember what all it is. So, key. Let's pick a key. A. Let's do A. I like A because A is the middle.
A.
So,
Mike. Aw.
all right.
Mike's
We
here.
made it.
Yay.
Yeah. Dude, nice
That's the
shirt.
latest.
I love that show.
Yeah.
All right, cool. You showed up right in time, dude. So, something we're gonna do today. Set up an amp, man.
I got it.
Okay, yeah, you're good. I'm glad you're here. Because we
sorry.
definitely
Yeah, we missed you, man.
I'll take one.
I figured you.
Oh, we got waters if anyone's thirsty.
Water? You want a mini or a biggie?
A biggie.
A biggie.
A big one.
I'm not
Mini
throwing
biggie
this.
small.
No way.
I'm gonna catch it like a football.
Well, what happens if I hit you right in the face?
It's alright.
No.
Throw another one.
No.
You'd cry and run away.
But anyways, all right. So we got our key. We're choosing A. Let's keep
Key of
it.
A.
Key of life.
Key of Light. Oh, that's a
Donovan?
great album, dude.
Hey man, good to see you.
I didn't know that was an album.
Good seeing you, man. Good seeing you, man.
Jason.
Hopefully we'll see you on the blue star one of these nights.
Guess
And
what
all
day
those
it is?
videos you posted were too good, dude.
What day it is?
It's actually Saturday, it's not hump day, but I just, had to say it.
It could be hump day depending on
It's
if
our
it's the
hump
middle of
day.
your
Oh,
week.
Wednesday. Oh wait.
It is Wednesday. Wednesday is. But it's
Oh.
it's Saturday wins.
Yeah.
When?
Yeah, I like
What's
your
your
day
day?
too.
Yeah, I like your day.
I like that.
I like everyone's guitars and bass in here. Alright, so we got our key. Now we need to come up with a little bit of a structure.
Okay.
So we need, let's call this a verse. We'll just use B. No, I got it. Alright, first chord. A. Good. Let's do that.
Oh, sorry, that's 7.
It can be a 7. As long as it's not an A minor. Because we're playing an A major.
AC/DC.
AC/DC, I like that.
That's cool. They should name a band that.
High voltage. Alright, so that's a pretty good part A, or verse, whatever you want to call it. Then we're gonna need a chorus.
Okay. Take the rings off. I don't even know if we're part of it.
I'm actually gonna use a different color for this. never.
usually
That'll work.
stays in tune pretty good, but it's been,
She usually
weather's been kind of.
What's her name?
Yeah.
Taylor.
No.
Taylor.
I have this nice. Oh, you got a tuner.
Multi.
Anybody else need a tune? Donovan, do you want an electric or are you good?
I mean, I'm good. I don't know if it's gonna be the most.
We'll see how it sounds, and then if you want, I'll.
He's too good anyways. Let him shut up. Shut up.
Flatter me.
I'll wait for everybody to tune.
Wow. I am seriously gross. I need a shower. I said you were working and we had
You know,
like
all those
an
sports
outside gym at his house.
Yeah, no, I'll alright, roll with it.
Yeah, and then I'm drunk and stuff.
Showers take too much effort.
Oh, sorry.
I just have massive feet.
Yeah, and your toes messed up. I don't need your way. I can't believe it.
They shouldn't have that marker.
I'm like, what the hell is with that already?
Can I use that knife for the seat?
You can. I'm gonna make some of you uncomfortable after we get through this one. It's gonna be me.
It is basic.
No, it's not gonna be you. It's gonna be everybody. You guys are all
It
gonna
just
do
might be you
something.
first.
No, we're gonna make everybody drunk today. Everybody has to drum today.
Yeah, it's rhythm.
I'm the co-host. That's exactly why. Because drumming is imperative to your musical abilities. Drums was my first instrument, so like I take it very seriously. I think every musician in the world should learn how to play
Proud of
something.
myself, Donovan. And I'm
Why?
Let's see your videos.
Very white, just to give you
As long
I'm
as
gonna
you
get a
keep
second
rhythm
teacher.
and just keep a quarter note pulse, that's all I care
the
about
one
today.
from
I'm not gonna ask you guys to learn rhythms.
the
That's
Nigerian.
three then.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
here.
In fact, we might just do like a drumming circle thing later if I can snag enough
You're
stuff
practicing
out
a
there.
lot though too.
Every day.
People when they first start.
Anybody else need a tune?
We'll see how good I am.
I don't even give a
I did it
fuck.
by ear.
Well, it's better being around him too. I have all. I'm like really lucky because I have like all the
Alright,
combinations of
Rich.
things to actually.
One thing I'll tell you, with this, because we're playing D major, you want to avoid this note. That's
Oh,
an F.
I wasn't.
Oh no, you're good. I'm just letting you know.
No,
So
I had
want
another
you to-
song in my head.
Oh, okay. What song is that, by the way? So is Alice in Chains really your favorite?
50-year-old
Yeah, I love
Oh,
Alice in
okay,
Chains.
cool. Very cool.
I saw them last summer. They're outstanding.
Oh, that
On
yeah,
the
that
anthem.
new singer guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Unreal, dude.
Who's this?
The new singer for Alice in Chains. He sounds just like Lance Staley, dude. I like him.
Oh, hi. Thank you.
He's better than
Mr.
Skeptical.
No,
my
not-
big red
not
tubes.
personally. I'm
My
like,
big red
you know, I
tubes.
could, well, I'm not even
People
gonna
were
say.
riding my big red
It's right just before fall.
All right, so we need another part.
Okay.
Who wants to help?
Well, what would this be? The chorus?
This is our chorus.
Or
Or our part B. I just am calling it a chorus. Who cares?
C.
C?
two C's?
Two C's.
Wait, no, there's already two C's. There's so many, not two C's.
Oh,
There's so many C's.
why not? Doesn't matter.
Oh.
We're trying to keep it kind of simple because I want everyone to improvise over
What
this
about
too.
G?
G-E.
Doesn't
Q?
matter. Doesn't matter. Okay, wait.
G.
Q. G.
G is a good chord. I love G. I can play that
G?
one.
GDB. How about
G-D-E.
What?
G, D, E.
E minor.
G, D, E minor.
That's good.
There we go. We need a little
Oh,
minor
that's
chord.
gonna be pretty.
Did we get an E minor? Was that what
I
it
like
was?
that.
I like it too.
And then what?
E.
Another
B.
E minor. B.
Can you go back to G?
That's a B minor.
No, that's okay.
Nah,
What do you guys want?
Maybe not.
You can go
I
back to
also
D.
think.
D?
G, D, D.
G, D, E, D. A, C, D, C, G, D, E, G,
G-D-E-D.
And so wait, what was after this?
D.
Good, I like that. Okay. The only reason I'm avoiding certain chords is because I want people to be able to solo over this, like we did last time.
Okay.
Let's make it double length. So it really keeps
Not a
everyone's
good idea.
attention. Alright, Alright, we need 4 more chords to complete this part.
Alright, so we got.
Let's make that in 4 now. Right now you're playing in 3. You're playing in 1, 2.
So what do you want to do?
So let's play like 1, 2.
Is that two? Either I'm out, somebody's out.
Yeah, like that. Nice and simple. We can change it around when we want, but let's keep it simple at first. But we need 4 more notes here.
Wait, this is right next to me.
Okay. Yeah, play that. That's my favorite acoustic in the world. I've had it.
Nice.
I'm so happy when I like holding it. You know what?
So it is.
Let's keep it way simple.
Oh, come on.
Alright, so now we have a song.
Alright, now we're just gonna repeat.
But we need a structure. Because we need to know how it's going to go, right? We don't want to just repeat this part until we get sick of it and then go to that part and do the same thing. So, simple. Remember, KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what I go by all the time.
Stupid something.
So let's say, verse. How many times do you guys want to play through that?
The verse
We
usually
need to
2
lay
to
out
3
this song.
times is a verse,
Let's
right?
do that 4.
2 to 3 verses. Alright, 4 verses.
Alright, and then chorus.
Alright, chorus.
Let's do that twice.
Again, 2 to 3, 4. You can do it up to 4 times.
Alright, let's do that. Then, we're going to do this. First solo. Who wants to take it?
Mike.
I'll take it.
There we go, that's what I was.
Jason points to Mike. Anything to get away from me, right? Bullshit. And then do
Right.
ready.
And that's whenever he nods at you and goes.
Whenever you nod, yeah, because you're going to
Maybe
cue.
you point.
Because this is about you guys communicating
Okay.
now.
So who's next?
So, after you,
And
I
then there'll
think
be another verse.
a good idea, okay, whenever someone's kind of done with a solo section, instead of just a nod and playing the same thing, you really lose your audience. And remember, not that we have an audience here, you guys are also the audience, right?
Right.
So what's interesting to you? Is it interesting to you when someone gets done a solo and the band's playing the same fucking thing they were just playing?
No.
Or is it interesting when someone's done a solo and the band is like, bam, new part?
That's
For
true.
me, it's a
Yeah.
new part.
I
Yeah,
agree
like
with that.
it sounds so cool when a band is soloing and you just see them jamming, and then all of a sudden, you know, the guitar player's like, and boom, you're in the new part. No one expects that. You know what I mean? That's so. I think going to the chorus. Let's just say times 2. Keep it short. Next, we got a verse. Someone's gonna solo here, and it's gonna be Jason.
Ooh.
Say what?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, brother.
I'm not picking on you, man. Everybody's gonna
What am I supposed to solo?
A minor
You did so
pentatonic.
good last time.
Remember the pentatonic scale?
You did.
Yeah, don't shake your head, man.
Yeah.
Don't worry, dude. This is not, you're not supposed to come in here and be able to fucking shred, dude. If you could, this class is not for
You
you.
can't.
I know I
shred.
can.
Yes, no.
No, I'm saying, you're not supposed to be able to come in here and like, kill it, dude. Like, we just learned this stuff last week, okay? So this is a refresher, man. This is putting it to use. Imagine if you went to college and you learned all in school how to build a house and you never actually went out and built a house. So you have all this like knowledge sitting up there that you're not physically using with your hands. People need homes. People need music. And you have sets coming up. Then you said you want to learn how to play over a blues. And we did that last week. Now we're playing over a slightly modified kind of blues. That A minor pentatonic is going to fit over all these chords, okay? All you got to do is feel it. You don't need to pull out crazy licks. Don't feel pressure.
I
This
love
is
it.
just
So let
for
me
you to
ask
kind
you.
of use your skills.
So if would I play in this in the like in a blues like last week we did it we did A minor.
Yep.
So what if I'm playing a D C G progression, blues progression? Where would I wouldn't know where to
Okay, so that is a good question. See that guitar. This is where you have to kind of step outside of what all we learned was in A, okay? But try to think about what's your key first. What's the key of that song you just made? This is a really good question, everybody, so I'm going to interrupt this for a
You said
second.
G,
We're gonna go
right?
there. You said DCG,
Or DC.
blues progression, right? So what do you think the key is of that?
G.
Good, very good. It's not D, only because D's your 5 chord, right? In a blues, we have a 1, 4, and a 5.
Even though it starts on.
Even though
It starts on D.
You can start on whatever chord you want, but you have to remember what our 1 is, like our root chords. All right, let's say that's our progression. Now, that being said, you won't want to play just a minor pentatonic. Do you remember the major? Now, we didn't play the major. Actually,
was
you know
in
what?
that
This is
video
something
you
I need to
sent.
teach you guys.
Oh, but
It
we
was
want
in that video you sent. I
was.
remember something about
I'm glad
it.
you
You
saw
did
that.
the difference between a
Don't
minor
erase
and a
that.
major.
I'm not.
Why can't you make it right here?
Yeah, I can.
Or I can write this down.
So I need to show you guys something really important I didn't get to show you guys last.
I'll write this down. We can come back to
I
it.
tried another way.
I know I have them at my house. Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't do it.
Alright.
Do you want me to erase this? I can write this down.
Flip side's not a whiteboard, is it?
I wish. That'd be super cool,
No,
right?
I know. I wish it was
That's
too.
what we should make. Whiteboard, making a whiteboard is kind of easy, actually.
That's alright. I'm gonna write really cleanly. So
Use the front of the drum. Use the front of the bass drum.
Alright, so
You could use my phone.
let's get back to some theory and stuff here because this is really important. This is called the relative major, and yeah, Donovan probably already knows it. Really, dude.
There's a pen over
Let me
here.
bite it.
Oh, that's a Sharpie.
Yeah.
You got another one in there?
I don't think I have any.
Oh, yeah. There's a pencil over here. Oh, that's one you
One over here.
Alright.
What's on with that pen?
Oh, this is yours?
No.
Oh.
You little, yeah. That sounds good, Jason.
So, what does the word relative mean?
Someone that you know, that's your cousin.
Right.
Somebody
But it means something tied in with something else, right? Something connected, okay? So everything, the really important thing to remember here is that everything in music is very, very connected. And most stuff that you guys will play ever in your life relates back to that major scale that we've learned. Alright, that's the reason I like harped on it and focused on it, because that thing, everything about it is important. The fact that it involves a formula, and the formula that's involved is all about spaces between notes, okay? So that's how you form that. You build chords out of that. You build solos out of that. You can make melodies out of it. The only thing you can't do is write your words, right? Which comes from our English language as opposed to the language of music. So anyways, what's our C major scale?
C, D, E, F, G,
What is it?
C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C.
Very good.
All right.
Number one student award.
Show off.
Good job.
All right.
Thank God it's alphabetical
Now,
order.
You
Yeah, I
guys
know,
remember when I talked about scale degrees?
Um,
How do we measure the temperature?
With degrees.
Degrees, right? Degree is just a fancy word for what part of something, that's how we refer to it. It's a unit. That's all degree really means. It's what unit you're on. So that unit of measurement is also used in music. So each of these notes has a degree to it, okay? And it's really, really simple. C is 1, okay? What do you think that makes D?
Two.
Exactly.
That's
and
pretty
so on,
profound.
and so forth. Right? Now, when we get to 8, it's also 1. Okay, because in a 7-note scale, we don't repeat any of these letter names. That's an easy way to remember this stuff. Right? We don't repeat anything until we get to the root again. Right? And then it starts over, and that's how we can play this formula up and down. Classical music is entirely built of this almost. Which it always sounds so complicated, but classical music is most of the time based on this stuff until you get into later stuff. So anyways, now we're gonna look at our interval pattern. Anybody remember what an interval is?
Half steps, half tones,
It's
whatever.
a space between, yeah, and it's half and whole steps, right? So I'm not gonna make you guys do that again, but I'm writing this out so you can see what's going on. Anyone got questions so far?
Oh yeah,
Sure.
full, half full.
So everyone remembers this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know, sorry, it's not on the whiteboard. I don't want to erase our song.
Our song.
I'm going to leave this so everyone can take pictures of it too.
I'm taking a picture right now. Seriously, I have photographic memory. That's
So-
the way I remember things, is by, you know.
In a major scale, if we start, I really wish I had another whiteboard. I hate doing this. In our major scale, if we start on the 6th scale degree, okay, A, then go up from there using all these same notes.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Bam. Now we have a minor scale, okay? This is called, that's why it's called the relative major or minor, okay? C major is the relative major of A minor. A minor is the relative minor of C major. And all that really means is if I take this thing, right, and I start here,
Wow, you read a lot more nicer on paper.
I now have a different way of laying this scale out. It's actually the exact same, I chose a different letter to start on, right? So it relates back to C, and it's a minor scale. That's really all that I'm trying to say. So play these notes, play A. Good, now play B. Now play C. Okay, before we go any farther, what's our whole and half step pattern right there?
Whole half.
Right, whole half, right? Whereas opposed to in the major scale, we have a whole and a whole. Okay, so I went over this pretty quickly, but it's really important that you kind of are paying attention to this. Okay, so our degrees are going to change. Okay, they're all the same right now until we look at our intervals, right? So if we look at this and we see a whole and then a half, that makes this no longer just a 3. Okay? That makes this a flat 3. Do you guys remember?
D flat.
No, it's a C. It stays a C. The degree changes, not the note, right? Okay? The only reason that happens is because we're going a half step as opposed to a whole. If we went a whole step, we have a regular natural sounding 3. Okay? If we go a half step, we have an unnatural sounding flat 3rd. Minor isn't natural to your ear. It's labeled this way just to communicate, okay? I don't want to just label it the same.
That hurts.
Let me put it this way. It's more important to remember that the 3rd is a defining factor in a chord or scale or whatever being minor or major, okay? So if I go 2 whole steps up from the root, I get a major 3rd, okay? For example, C to E. Yeah, if I go 1.5 steps up, meaning whole step plus half step, I get a minor 3rd. Yeah, so this is just something to remember. All you have to really remember is that the 3rd is a very influencing factor on the sound of what you're doing, right? Play a C major. Actually, better yet, wait, play an A major. Good. Everyone in here play a nice A major. If you want rich, just hit an A. Sounds nice and happy, right? Now, everyone play an A minor. You hear what you just did? Happy to sad, right? Let's do our emotions. But what we really did was, what note did did you change?
The bass.
That's a
Sharp.
C sharp.
C sharp.
Right. You lowered it to a C. Now, very rarely in a song are you going to play the same chord major followed by that same chord minor. But there's some songs that do that. But my point is,
Jennifer
being
Romano,
able
what's
to
his name?
navigate between
Does that?
these is how you figure out what you're playing in, okay? So getting back to your question, D, C, G progression, okay? Now, even though G is our key, this is getting into a little bit of another thing, but we probably want to play in D because D is dominating that chord progression, right? Because you're starting with it. And that doesn't mean it's your key. You're right, because your key would be G. Does that make sense? What it is, I'm not going to get too into this just because I don't want to get too hooked up on this. Because your guys' ears already know all this stuff. Play your D, C, G progression. Is that Kenny Wayne Shepherd? I love that song. Okay, so.
Blue on Black.
Yeah, Blue on Black. Nice. So, anyways, what out of those chords? What chords do you guys hear the most? D, right? Yeah. So that's what's called your tonal center. All that means is it's the chord that's dominating a
So
progression.
that's what he starts the first solo with.
Right. He starts in D. So that's a perfect example. There's plenty of other songs. Sweet Home Alabama, dude. Same thing. And Skinner's playing that whole solo in D. But what I'm getting at is, you said, how do I know what to solo in? Okay. So first you got to find out what you got to know what your chords are. If you want to go deep, you got to know what they're made of. Which we can musically analyze that really quickly, and I bet everyone in here could actually do that pretty fast. We'll do that in a second though. So we know our chords, we gotta know if it's major or minor. Okay, so that is all major, but when you put the chords together, it gives you a bit of a different thing. So we know the solo, we're gonna solo in D. Now how do we know if it's D major or D minor?
The tone of it?
Yeah,
Third.
the third.
Oh.
But that song is kind of trivial because Kenny Wayne Shepherd solos in D minor, but he's playing a major chord. This is where theory doesn't really matter. It's all about your ears. What sounds good to your ears? If you start soloing in a minor key over a major chord and it sounds like shit, don't do that.
Don't do it.
Find something relative to go with. So, like in this example here, we're playing an A major, but we're gonna solo in A minor. Do you know why?
No, I don't.
Well, because what chord follows A?
C.
Right. And how far away is C from A? What is
Three.
C relating back to A?
3. So it's the third.
It's a whole and a half
Oh,
to get
I
to C,
see.
which is a minor third. So we're just kind of using our best to analyze.
That's pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't mean to overwhelm you guys. If you have questions, I can answer them. But what I'm getting at is knowing what you're doing is really hard. So you just gotta sometimes go by this and just try to feel it. But the reason I'm having you do the A minor pentatonic is because these three notes, regardless of the chord quality, are in A minor pentatonic, right? What are the notes that are minor pentatonic? We have A.
E.
Nope, we skipped the second, right?
A, C, E, E.
G, and that's it. Pentatonic means 5 notes. Okay? Right, except don't do this, but this is your B. So you want to skip that. Yeah. Let's review that. Does anyone have questions? I know that was like a shit ton of stuff. I'm sorry that got really deep. Makes sense though, right? This is kind of that question that you asked me about the other week.
Right.
Now granted, it depends on how complicated of music you're getting into. When you get into like stuff with different
Go take
chord
that
qualities,
music theory class.
all you really have to do is analyze what you're doing. You know?
And I know what you said is right. It's all about what you hear.
It's all about what you hear. I can teach you guys all the theory in the fucking world. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like, it matters to me.
It really helps.
When I solo, I want to get way outside of the box. In order to do that, I learn the rules so that I can break all of them. You know what I mean? Like, that's what jazz essentially does. And rock does too. There's a lot of guys in rock that have never read a fucking lick of music. They've never learned shit from anyone. They've only ever played with their ear. a huge fan of Kiss, but like those guys.
Oh, I love
fucking kill it,
Kiss.
dude. Yeah, and
They're
I'm
fucking how
saying,
old and they're still playing.
You listen to Ace Frehley, right?
Right.
He's like okay compared to Eddie Van Halen. You know what I mean? He's like okay compared to Guthrie Govan. Guthrie can outplay Eddie all day, but who's more famous? Whose music is more popular? You know? So it's what you want to go for. If you want to appeal to the musicians of the world, then you learn all the fucking shit you can and
Learn all the
you trade your theory. But if you just want to rock, if you just want to make people feel good and make them dance and stuff, simplicity is the way. And so, like, basically what I'm getting at is if you can link together this little bit of knowledge I've given you guys, hopefully that I've given you, helped you guys, with using your ear, playing, and then just trying to branch out, do different shit. Do stuff that makes you really uncomfortable too. Try and learn something that's really hard. You know, because if you suck at it, guess what? That person probably sucked at it when they wrote it. You know, like, I was watching, do any of you guys know who Dream Theater is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was watching a documentary on them, and their bass player, John Mayer, ridiculous bass player. He plays a 6-string bass. I mean, this man can shred. And he said it took him like 200 tries to do a song that they ended up changing to make simpler. Because it was so fast and so difficult in the studio. And it's like, wow, even a guy who wrote the thing can't even play the thing he just wrote. You know what I mean? And so, it doesn't matter how fucking theoretical shit like that. But, does this make sense now, Jason? And everybody? Kind of why we're using our A minor pentatonic, even though we're playing a major chord?
Yes.
Now when we go to your D thing, it's the same thing. Okay? So if I'm playing E, C, G, the only reason that it works is because of all the notes we're using. D, C, and G are all common notes in D minor pentatonic. So now, if you want to figure out where the hell to go, you need to know a couple things. This is why you got to practice your scales.
Practice your
It's
skills.
not about knowing all the theory. It is about getting your fingers moving. That's the most important thing. If you know your shapes on the guitar, you can play anything. That's why I like Mike. Not to use you as an example, but you know that open house. I remember we jammed and everyone was like, "Wow, you can just step in anywhere." And you might not even know what key you're in, but I guarantee you can find it like that because you know your shapes on the guitar. Probably, you know, and it helps like a lot. And when you know how to play like a box pattern, for example. So I'm going to show you guys all this, and we're going to do it all within 4 frets. Okay. So a box pattern is something that is involved vertical, meaning up and down, like this way, or your y-axis, whatever you want to call it, on the guitar. So find an A on your E string. It's your 5th fret, right? Now you're going to go up how many to get to C?
Whole.
3. 3.
All right.
Right. Then you're going to go to the next string and go to D. Okay, and then you're going to go up a whole step to E. Go up the next string to G, and then you repeat. So that's A. Right. Now, on bass, you're going to have to move horizontally, and I'll show you that in a second. But all guitar players, let's do all this together. I want you guys to be able to play this up and down all 6 strings. See, Mike already knows the shape. This is why learning your shapes is the most important thing. Because if you can find the key you're in, D, then you can just go, oh, I know my A shape. Now I have to mess with it a little bit. Now I have my D shape. Or I can go up to the D that's on the E string. Right? Now I have it there. So, anyways, box pattern. A, C, D, E, one thing. So it's all about how much you want to be able to do with it. But knowing that shape, that's an A, right? So that still doesn't solve our problem.
So that solo would be here.
Find D. Yes. Bam. Right there. Now we're in D. So from there, now, even though that box pattern is a little limiting, because there are so many other patterns you can use, and so many different ways you can go on the guitar, but it's a good starting point. And if you can train your fingers to move like that, you'll know it no problem. Now, Rich, I gotta show you something. This is why I actually like bass better.
Why can't I just do the box thing?
You can, but if you want to get, see how we're going all the way up to this
Yeah.
high note?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how you can get to this A right there.
Take it and show me.
Alright, cool. And if you want, actually, you can take a video. If you want to do that with your phone, it's up to you. It'll be on this video, I guess, too. I don't know if the video can see me or not. If I'm sitting down here. So, all we're doing here is because you have to move a little more horizontally, which you can do on the guitar too. For bass, you know, a little less strings, we kind of don't have a choice. But if you want to go from this to that, what you're going to do is you're going to play, learn your box pattern first.
My hand was going like this.
Makes it so easy, doesn't it?
Well, okay.
So that's what you, that way what you just did.
No, I just, the box pattern for you is going to be 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7. And the only problem is, and I say problem because my goal is to get you up to this A.
Right.
That's a D.
Right.
Okay. So if you want to be able to move up horizontally a little bit, and this takes some practice, so give your hand a chance to like learn it. It's playing 3 notes, so you're actually going to do that, and then move up a note. Then you're going to do that, move up a note. Then you're going to do this, move up. So I can fly. This is what I was talking about, that when you were like, why would I want to move horizontally when I can do vertically? It's like, well, if you can do both, you can express yourself so much more. Now I can get to that if I want. So, moving horizontally in the bass is tough. Do you know who Jacques Ristorius is?
I've heard the name.
Oh man, you gotta watch some videos of that guy. He's a best bass player in the world. Like, amazing. He plays a fretless and just flies. He plays crazy jazz fusion shit. I think you're gonna like fall in love with that guy. Check it out. Yeah. So all I'm doing is I'm thinking, what are the notes in A minor pentatonic, which are A, C, D, E, G, and then we repeat. So if you can kind of do this nice and slow, thinking on one string, or thinking of your box pattern first, right?
It's just a wider box.
It's a wider box essentially. We're expanding it.
Yeah.
I call it a slide progression instead of a box progression, because I'm actually just letting my hand go. One other thing, and if you want, we can look at this a lot more like in depth in like a private lesson thing. One thing you want to be careful of, because bass is different than guitar, gripping way too hard with your thumb. Actually, this goes for everybody. If you guys find yourself squeezing stupid hard, tell me, because we need to work on that when you're playing your stuff. Your thumb should be like pretty relaxed on the back of the neck. Mine's almost always on the apex of the curve. But anyways, think of your notes, right? So if I'm trying to kind of lay this out, 3 notes per string.
Right.
And you guys can actually all do this too. I'm gonna scoot back so everyone can kind of see this. Let's do this one together. So it's same A. Find your A on your E string. So 5th fret. And then go to your C. Now you're gonna move your whole hand up and hit the 10th fret.
What finger are you using there?
And you can do that too.
I can't tell.
All of them. Never do that. Use all your fingers.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another thing I like to trick people because they never know what I'm playing. When I go to use my
Okay,
pinky,
but it's the pinky that's actually
I'm not playing those two notes anymore. I don't need to. So, we're going to do this all together if you guys want to join. So we're going to go A, C, E, all on the E string. Okay? So far. Yeah. Now, you want to land on your pinky or ring finger, but don't do this. Don't let this happen. You need to let your fingers like rest. Alright? Then we're going to go to the 7th fret on the A string, which, what note is that? E, yeah. And then you do the same exact pattern. You're going up 3 frets to G, and then 2 frets to A. So, here, I'm going to let you get this back, because you need to do this one. So all we just did, do it. Notice something, this is the same finger pattern twice, right? We're going root note, up 3 frets, followed by up 2 frets. Then the 5th, or the E, up 3 frets, up 2 frets. So we've now just figured out how to go horizontally on the guitar as well. What took us 3 strings before, that would be up. Now granted, you gotta get good with your thumb. Let it slide. But it's a pretty cool way to be able to play your stuff. Okay. So our goal is to get to the 14th fret on the G string. So we're back at A, right, on the 12th fret of the A string. 12th fret of the A. There you go. Now you're going to want to do this with your ring finger or your pinky, because remember how we got there. Right? I know I'm moving a little bit fast. Anyone have questions? Okay, yep, you got it. Then we go to C, which is the 10th fret on the D string. Okay, then we go to D, 12th fret, and then we go to E, 14th. Then the next string only has 2 notes left before we complete our box. And then if you have a guitar with a cool cutaway or it's an electric, you can keep fucking going. Yeah. You just have to know your notes, know how you're trying to get there, make it easy for your hand. You don't want to work very hard. Eventually, you can walk like a fucking spider all the way across the string. It's pretty sweet when you get it down, and it sounds super cool. And a lot of times, like I don't know if you guys ever listen to like 80s metal shit, of like like Steve Vai shredding. Now Steve knows his stuff, but sometimes those guys are just doing this scale, the thing we just did, really, really fast, and they're going right. It sounds like they're hitting a million notes, but they're really only hitting 5 repeatedly, upward or downward, really, really fast. That's all they're doing. A lot of things like that cool sweeping thing you know how to do. How many notes do you think are in that?
Probably like
You know the
5
pattern.
total.
Probably 5, right? Yeah, it's an arpeggio or it's a broken up scale like we figured out here. Does anybody have any questions on any of this so far? I'm throwing you guys a ton of
A lot of
information.
practice, that's all.
Okay?
A lot of practice.
Now, I'm going to write down
How many times you take mic practice out?
a lot.
More than I have, let's say.
Probably without even really like thinking about it.
Right,
But
exactly.
eventually you don't have to think about it.
Well, right, your muscle
I'm
memory
trying to get
comes
you.
in.
So most of what I'm trying to get you guys is use your fingers differently than you did before. Think a little more about what you're doing. Because if you're not,
Are they gonna happen?
well, it doesn't matter though. It might sound good and it might not.
Right.
If it doesn't sound good, that's when you kind of gotta take a step back and go, oh wait, what the fuck am I playing? You know, like, because when you really sit down and look at it, you can figure it out. No,
A.
that's not true at all.
What's squeaking?
It was A,
I thought he was playing like the kielbasa, like.
A, C,
You know what I'm
D,
saying?
A, C, D.
ACDC.
He was actually playing.
I don't even know what I was playing.
Well, sometimes you went to the D, yeah. But mostly what I heard was A, C, G, and then possible D, possible A. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the only reason I asked that
Why you gonna stick it to your forehead, Jason? It's underneath you.
and I'm not trying to make an example with Rich or anything, but who's the glue in the band?
Bass.
Drums and bass. No offense to guitars, but when you guys are playing, you do that. The guitar is the most fucking appealing instrument. Look at it, dude. Everyone has one.
I know.
What's your
What?
The rhythm and
All
the
I mean
drums.
is, everyone has to work together a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that means anybody did anything wrong, but I asked that question for a reason. Because a lot of times in a setting where there's, and this is different, this is a class, but I've seen plenty of bands go up with 2, 3 fucking guitar players, keyboard player, horn section, you know, if their stuff isn't really written out, it's not even that they're lost, it's just it's solo soup.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone's
It's hard.
taking a fucking solo
Nobody
all at
knows
the same
what's
time,
going
and the
on.
audience has no clue what
Yeah,
the hell
it's
is
kind of like
Half the
overwhelming.
time the people in the band are like, wow, this is just really fucking loud.
Yeah.
And
It's like, whoa,
the drummer
what
and
is
bass
happening?
player, as long as they're holding it down, are usually just like, man, I hope that we're done soon. I gotta pee. You know.
Mighty boss, Tom.
Yeah. So, and that's not to say anything against anyone. Like I said, it's just something to think about. You know, in a situation, it's like, how do I play off of? Like, who do I play off of? It's really the question. Because when you're jamming and you're improvising, it's really easy to look at someone with the same instrument as you, because that's the familiarity. Especially if you don't know the people you're playing with, you go to something familiar, right? Who do you go? Who do you look at? When you get up with your band, and I know you know those guys. Well, let's say you didn't. Who would you look at first?
Drummer.
Why?
Because he's the skeleton. I mean, he's the.
That's not a bad answer, but why not the bass player?
We usually because the drummer starts the song out.
Well, the bass syncs.
The only reason
To the
that,
drummer.
Well,
that's
it-
good
I
to
mean,
do
it-
at first, but I guess I mean like, if say you didn't know the song, then who would you look at? Say you kind of were,
Drums.
say somebody was playing and they asked you to play like they did the other day, and they were like, you know, here's the chords,
The
and you
guitarist.
get up there.
But the guitarist.
I'd look at the bass player, dude.
Yeah, well, he was looking
Yeah,
at
That's his
the
guitar
answer.
player.
It doesn't matter what
Yeah,
you
that's
think.
cool. I'm just saying.
It gives you
just
the root
saying,
notes. I
You
mean,
might want to look at the bass player. Yeah, and the
Well,
only
see,
reason is, say you're that other guitar player, it's like, yeah, here's the chords, and then he just solos the whole time.
see, but a lot of times the bass player looks at me and what he says is he says, when you paw your chords a lot, and I do a lot of add nines. And he's like, oh, you playing a G, you playing a C. I'm like,
Okay, well that's
know
not
the
cool.
song, and then you'll know that I'm
I
not
guess what I meant
playing.
is like,
a G.
in a-
But then, I mean, if
I'm
I
not saying
looked
you're
at a
wrong.
bass player, I would have no clue. I would listen.
why
But
not?
by looking
You
at
don't even
it,
know they had.
Yes.
no.
That's really good.
I know,
Same as
because I was
that.
looking at it. Right, so the first four strings of a guitar,
That's on
the first
the bottom for it.
But when I'm playing chords, why would I look at him? I don't know what he's playing. I don't know.
Okay.
Because you gotta know.
Right, I could hear it.
Yeah.
So if I can hear the rhythm, then I can learn.
All I'm really getting at too is like,
I like
say it's
that.
not even like a cover song. Say it's more of like a jam session, right? And you get up there and someone goes, "Hey, we're gonna do these chords."
Oh, I guess.
No,
Right.
okay.
Brain fart.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call
What
it?
happens? Who do you look at? Who's the first person you look at?
Well, bass player, right?
I would actually, yeah, but see, I'm a bass player, so I never look at me.
No, I did.
But that's a good answer. The other thing is, you're right too to say the drum.
Sorry about my.
I would never look at a guitar player during a jam session because they're just gonna start soloing, dude.
And also, you
No
can barely
offense.
hear the guitar
Right.
when everyone's jamming already.
Right. I mean, I've just done that before. I've been to so many jam sessions where no songs are played, all are jam. Like we're doing in here. And sometimes people want to throw some complicated bones your way, and I'm like, dude, fuck no. Like, keep that shit simple. There's 8 people up here. Everyone's gonna get lost. Which is why this is a really good exercise, and you guys are already doing better than 90% of those people that claim they can fucking jam well.
Right, and when because you heard me, I kept screwing up.
No, I wasn't.
Nobody
screw
hears
up.
you.
Well, I was, because I was playing this instead of this.
Yeah, but you were trying to fix it.
By listening,
The other thing is, if you feel like volume becomes another thing, and I'm not gonna walk around and touch everyone's volume. I want you guys to have fun, and as long as you can hear yourselves, I'm cool with it. The camera can hear everything.
Uh-oh.
But so the other thing is like overplaying.
really feel.
So like the only thing I will say on your end, Greg, is maybe next time calm me a little bit. Right? Yeah. But you're a type of guitar player where you're controlling the dynamics, man. Your personality, no offense to everyone else in here, but your personality just is like it's big. Dude.
Well, that's what I do
So
up on stage.
you're kind of like a drummer, okay? When in this situation. Now, when you start playing louder,
Look at this.
everyone else is starting to amp up a little bit, right? When you start playing quieter, everyone else kind of is following you. So in a way, you're a leader there,
Gotcha.
right?
A leader.
You need to just
A leader.
sing or something.
What's your name? A
You got the
leader.
lyrics? Bring some next week, dude, because we
I have my
need
lyrics.
some.
I don't get it right.
I have my lyrics.
No, it's fine.
Well, figure something
I have
out. You
lyrics.
gotta be more confident.
Yeah,
I need you to step up your confidence.
I'm always ready.
You're an essential member of this group. You got your career.
Well, have you ever seen him on
Yeah,
I
I that's why I'm like,
He's
you
pretty
hear-
confident up there. I mean,
could've been
there you're
solo,
just
man.
shy. I don't know why you're shy.
Yeah, you're shy. And I am gonna pick on you a little bit.
I'm shy until I get on stage.
Right, when you
But
get on stage.
This is the
even
best
then, I'm
stage.
still shy because I'm not really a frontman. I'm
Right, I see that.
That's okay.
You do okay. I mean, you do what you do, but.
But
You just sit back.
I think
Randy just like, cover up my voice.
Let me take a solo. Yeah,
so
I want you
I don't
guys
know how
to
some people do
do.
that.
I want you
Oh my
guys
God,
to
neither
do
do I.
justice.
That shit is
Especially night
Play
after
something
night.
different. Play something the same.
Like,
Somebody
we
needs
did
to kind of be a
during
starter.
voice
Now, one thing I will say is Rich is a really good starter. Okay? Whenever I've noticed that whenever it gets a little quiet and you guys actually start kind of melting together, and that's what I was like, oh, this is fucking perfect. Also, these are all here so you guys can take pictures.
Yeah.
Rich is a really good starter. And Rich lays it down and he has a solid idea like that. Okay? So
Yeah, Rich. Woo!
this is another really important thing about playing out. Figuring out who can do what. Okay? In a band, it's important to make compromise. Not everyone can do everything. Right? You guys don't sing like that. But you're gonna be in a room eventually. You might find it at an open mic when you're playing and some new guy comes in and he wants to just fucking be in charge and act like it's like his thing, and it's like, no, it's not. Right?
Yeah, but I
So
don't play
that's
with
where you
it.
gotta be confident to be like, number one, you're being a fucking asshole. You know, we're all sharing the stage. Number two, you gotta be able to be like, man, I don't care if you want to solo or not, because in here you have to solo.
You have to solo.
So you guys need to just actually communicate with each other a little bit more. I'm noticing a little bit of nervousness sometimes that people don't want to look each other in the eye. Looking each other in the eye is the most meaningful thing you can do in a group setting. It might make you a little uncomfortable, but like, dude, I'm serious, man. I've been on stage and a guitar player goes off and off and off, and I have a good friend named Mike Candela who's a ridiculously good guitar player. But that dude used to have the worst problem with soloing for fucking ever.
So
And he's deaf,
It's like
so
really
it doesn't
kids.
help. Like, he
Oh,
actually was
really?
born
He's actually
pretty
deaf.
much mostly deaf. So it was like I would have to like seriously.
It's so bad.
I was
It's
standing there and he's
bad.
just like, yeah, we're jamming. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, solo more. And I'm like,
No!
So like, sometimes he's just off in his zone.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's really good. That's not the point. Though. The point was, you know, he wasn't making eye contact with me. And I was designated the band leader. I was telling everyone when we're gonna change because we're doing mostly improvised music. You know, we had like set songs with a chord progression here, chord progression here. We were gonna go into this song, but we didn't know when because you can't plan for all that stuff. Right? So you need someone kind of cue. That's where, like, even though the name band leader sounds like you're up here and everyone's down here, that's just not true. It's just you need one person with designated cues, right? You need one person to say, hey, we're fucking changing the song. Hey, we're changing the key. Hey, we're done with that part. We're going to the next part.
Don't you throw your arms at me?
And I mean, you can, right? When your hands are busy. So, and the drummer can't move. So the drummer's not always the best band leader unless everybody can see their fucking eyes. But bass player, guitar player, keyboard players are really good. A singer that can preferably play an instrument. Those are good people to be your band leader because they can walk around. And if you're, how many times you guys play with your eyes closed?
No, I played enough with my eyes.
dude, I do it all the time. But the problem in a band setting is your bandmates can't fucking.
You can't
see
see
your
that.
bandmates, you know.
So if you do a high kick.
Right. And I mean, I've seen drummers that are like, bam. You know, that's how you know. If the drummer like picks up over the cymbals, then you really know you're going
Like
way
Ricky
too long.
Slaves that.
But he doesn't have to. He's fucking
I
garbage.
know.
So
Let's
anyway,
get out over here.
let's get a jam thing going again. You're welcome to pick up your guitar.
Alright.
I think Rich, you should start something.
Yeah,
You're a
we'll
great
just
starter.
come
You
in.
always have a little solid line to start. It could be the same thing you did before.